Hello, my fellow comic book collectors. It's Alan, the Comic Collector Geek, and this is going to be my review of the Cross the Spider-Verse movie that I just watched. I just got back from the movie theater, and I figured, hey, I'll do a review, post it out. Hopefully, there's not too much of my commentary that will get me in trouble. Like I always seem to get in trouble when I do my reviews, but but I actually really enjoyed the movie. So, spoiler alert, I enjoyed the movie. um, I'm going to give you my feedback about it, and it's different than like I actually kind of went into this movie a little bit spoiled because I knew certain things that I heard other reviews, spoiler free other reviews, I should say. Um, and my opinion seemed to be very different from what I heard. So, one of the comments that I heard on other reviews was that the movie was a bit slow. And I didn't find that. I actually found that it flowed reasonably well. The only things I would have kind of dialed down on the video in the movie were scenes with Miles Morales' family. I would have kind of maybe chopped those a bit more, but but for the most part, I thought it flowed really well. The other thing that I really enjoyed about this movie is the villain. Um, though I felt like in the third act he kind of got downplayed, which is a bit weird. But I felt like I liked the idea of the villain becoming more and more powerful. Um, One of the things I used to like as a kid watching movies is, and maybe this is sort of kind of like Infinity War, where the bad guy gets what he wants. And, in most movies, the bad guy doesn't get what he wants. He's stopped at the last minute before he gets that ultimate power or whatever it is. And in a weird way, I kind of want to see what would have happened if he did get his wish and he got that power and therefore was almost unstoppable. And how would the hero deal with that? Well, in this movie, they kind of built that up where the Spot, which is the main villain, is kind of a goof. Like they kind of put him down in a way. Like, oh, you're just villain of the week. You're a villain of the day. You're nobody. You're not my nemesis. You're nobody. And they're kind of downplaying him. And he is kind of a weak villain at the beginning of the movie. And but you see that the villain is kind of going through what the hero's journey usually goes through, where the hero doesn't really understand his own powers and has to learn what his powers are and really develop as a hero. Well, that's the same journey that the Spot goes through, where he's a bit of an inept hero villain at the beginning, but he really comes into his own and learns about how to improve his own powers, and really he realizes how powerful he can be. And I think that was a very interesting arc that I really enjoyed about the movie. So I really liked the villain. Now, a lot of people say that Spider-Man 2099 is the villain of this movie, and I would say that that is true-ish. True-ish. So the motivation for Spider-Man 2099 is that what happens is what the multiverse that exists, or the Spider-Verse, is all connected by a series of events that has to happen for the characters. And and usually it's the death of Uncle Ben, or the death of the police chief, or these sort of canon events. They call them canon events, which is playing on the comics, obviously. And if those don't happen, those universes will actually collapse and die. And if enough of those universes die, well, the whole thing collapses and everybody's dead. so it all falls apart is really the basis for it. And 2099, Spider-Man 2099, he experienced this himself. He experienced this collapse of a universe. And so he's going into this belief with the idea that he wants to protect other universes from experiencing the same fate, where the universe can collapse if things don't go out as go according to plan, or these canon events aren't recognized. So Miles, though, he his canon event is that his father is set to die. Basically, they know that he's going to die in 2 days or whatever it is, and Miles is like, no, I don't want that to happen, and he's really going against the idea that we have to live by our fate, and it's sort of that whole idea of, and I think it's a very interesting idea of, do we live by our fate, or do we have the freedom of will or choice to make our own fates and decide what our own futures will be? And I thought that was a very interesting story, that you could have that kind of dynamic. And I felt like this was a very cool movie for those elements, that it really built up the characters, and it built up this dilemma of the hero, that there's a bit of selfishness in Miles, I would actually say, but it's not the typical selfishness that I see in a lot of movies nowadays, where the hero is just doing their own thing for their own benefit. It is the idea that Miles is not just protecting his father, but he's protecting a life, and stopping a villain from taking a life. And that, to me, is selfish because it is his father, but it's also heroic because it is the idea of protecting the ones that you love and protecting others. So I can appreciate it. And also, he is rebelling against the idea that we have to settle for what fate dictates. And I think that's interesting as well. So that's the overarching theme to the movie. Now, I want to kind of explain what I thought about the individual character development. So the biggest characters that got character development would be Spider-Gwen. And I thought her character development was really good. I enjoyed her parts probably the best. I really enjoyed Spider-Gwen. I thought she was really well developed, and you really feel for her. And she had much of the classic Spider-Man elements. The classic Spider-Man elements are the fact that the Spider-Man is, this hero that has the problem of hurting the ones that they love, and that's the Spider-Man arc. Like this, it is this intrinsic thing for Spider-Man, that the ones around Spider-Man always get hurt. So Spider-Man and Spider-Gwen in this case want to avoid hurting the ones that they love. So they do everything that they can to try to avoid that. And often that means hiding who they are to the ones that they love, and also means really taking things, like, as a result, taking a lot of the damage themselves in order to protect the ones that they love. And it's a really hard situation. You can sense it. They sometimes have to walk away from the very people that they love in order to protect them. And that's a very tragic hero, which we can all relate to. We can all say, oh, that's really cool. We can really appreciate that character. And that's the way it was with Gwen Stacy. And Gwen Stacy had a big dilemma that her father was also her nemesis. And I don't mean that in the traditional good guy, bad guy situation. It's more like, in the original Spider-Man story, we had Jonah Jameson as being Spider-Man's nemesis. And not that Jameson was a bad guy, but he was a foil to Spider-Man, and trying to always try to take Spider-Man out, reveal who Spider-Man was, and he was always that bit of an antagonist for Spider-Man. Well, in this case, with Spider-Gwen, it was her own father, which is a much closer relationship. So, with Spider-Man and Jameson, there's no love there. That, at the end of the day, Jameson's just his boss. But when it's the people that you love that are your antagonists or your foil, it can make it even much more difficult to really, you know, do anything against them. You know, that's what was really interesting about Gwen Stacy's or Spider Gwen's situation, was that she really loved her father, and there was actually I appreciated the fact that they show that there was this parent daughter love. I find nowadays movies, I don't know why they don't really like showing that dynamic of of parents being good parents and children loving their parents and wanting to be good children. I feel like, nowadays it's always the kids are always right and the parents are idiots. But this movie didn't have that. It really showed both as being legitimate in the way that they believed, and being on two sides of, but both, ultimately being in it together. I enjoyed that. Now, Miles's story, got a bit more development. I felt like it could have been, I would have liked to have seen him be the geeky, nerdy kid a bit more, and like really show his intelligence, because like they say, oh, he's going to go to Princeton or whatever, and they don't really show him being the smart kid. He seems a bit goofy and just sort of awkward and doesn't really showcase his intelligence. And I would like to have seen that a bit more. And I felt like his parents were portrayed well, in terms of like you could see that they really cared, and they just didn't know how to relate to their child. And as a parent, I can relate to that, especially having a teenage kid. It is definitely a problem, and you can sense that there's that not miscommunication, but lack of communication between the parents and their child. That things are not being said, and sometimes you just want to say, just talk to us, and there you can sense that, and that's real. And when you have a situation that is real and that people can relate to, it makes you really understand and appreciate the characters. And I thought they did a good job of that. Other characters. So the big thing with this movie is it introduces a lot of spider characters, and that was interesting. And I know that they really didn't spend much time on all those other spider characters. Maybe they spent the most on Spider-Punk and Spider India, both of which I liked. I thought they were very interesting. Spider-Punk actually I thought was really well done. You kind of like Spider-Punk. I don't know, something very, like, not much character development in terms of showing his backstory or anything like that, but the way he acts, you can kind of relate to him. He's that typical like punk rocker, like, that anarchist, typical, like, that 80s anarchist thing. And I thought that was interesting. So I kind of like Spider-Punk. Things that bothered me. Now, I always have to talk about some things that bother me in the movie, and I always like to talk about it later in my review videos, because all the people that are annoying will generally not reach this far in the video. So I try to mention it very, very at the end of the video. Here's a couple things that annoyed me. With movies nowadays, there is definitely an agenda being pushed in movies. And this one, I have to say, the agenda was not as in your face. It was much more subtle, almost subliminal. I'd have to say it's a subliminal agenda pushing. There was a couple things, they did the race swap of Spider-Woman. And the fact that she's pregnant was kind of weird, and the fact that Peter Parker was going around with a baby, it's a little weird. I thought those were both kind of didn't really make sense. I know in the comics there is a black Spider-Woman, so actually I didn't necessarily mind that part, because it is the multiverse. I don't mind the fact that there's potentially a black Spider-Woman. because they actually showed a white Spider Woman in one of the background characters. So I thought, sure, why not? I don't mind. I was more bothered by the fact that she's pregnant. I just really, I thought that was like so dumb. I just, you just don't want to see that kind of action with a pregnant woman. It's just not safe for the baby, and like I just don't see it as a good thing. I would have just rather her be like a normal without that. I know that they did put it in the comics, but I think it was stupid in the comics too. So just that was just my little bit about that. But what I was talking about, the subliminalness of like the agenda pushing, was not necessarily the race swap that I just mentioned. It was signage. They put in different signs in the background. You might not even notice it. You probably watched the movie and you didn't notice it. But I'm very sensitive. I notice. I'm one of those people that notices when the microphone kind of drops in a shot. I notice that. I'll pick it up and say, hey, look, did you see that the microphone just dropped in the shot? I'll notice those things. So I notice like the little details. It's a weird thing about me, but I do notice the little details. And the little details that I noticed was in Gwen Stacy's room, one of the posters was, protect trans kids. Like, why? Why do you have that? Why would she have that? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. It's totally agenda driven. And on Miles' backpack, when he's in the school scene where he's meeting the counselor, they have him on his backpack, there's a pin that says BLM. Just like another thing. Like, why? Really? Like, do they have to have that? It seemed not necessary, and it didn't really make the character any more full, or it doesn't add anything to the character. And another scene, as I said, these were all very subtle. They had Spider-Man India basically in a quick seconds thing say, hey, this is the stuff that the English stole from us. And it was just like, really? Like, it just, all this stuff just seemed kind of very agenda pushing, much more subtle, but still there. And it really just bothered me. And that didn't detract from the whole entire movie. And as I said, the movie I really enjoyed. I would give it a 9 out of 10. I would give it a really high rating. I thought it was great in terms of that. Now, I gotta speak about the villain, the actual, like, as I said, a lot of people think Spider-Man 2099 was the villain. But he's a villain with, that is a true Spider-Man character, that he's a good guy. And as I said, he's trying to save potentially these universes from collapsing. And I felt like the way that they handled 2099 as a character was very similar to the situation where what happened with what's the one with Captain America versus Iron Man, where they both have their ideology that they believe in, and they both believe that they're doing the right thing. Captain America believes in freedom, and Iron Man believed in Civil War is the movie, believed in protection, and really almost overly protective, where you get almost like tyranny of protectionism. And we've experienced that in life, so we know that that's not the path to go. So it was really freedom versus tyranny. But tyranny, even when it's done with love, is still tyranny. And that's really the difference between Miles and 2099, Spider-Man 2099. One believed in freedom, and one believed in control and stopping. Things have to be this way. You can't change it up. And again, which is the better? Which is who's right? And I think that's ultimately what we'll see in the second movie. That'd be my biggest complaint about this movie, actually. So my biggest complaint about this movie is how it ends. I'm not saying it ends badly. I'm just annoyed that it ends and you're left wondering what's going to happen in the next movie. It ends with, you know, typical cliffhanger and, you know, all the coolness of that cliffhanger, but it it's almost a bit unsatisfying as an end, because you really want to find out what's going to happen next. And I mean, that's a good thing that they have that hook at the end, that you really do want to see the next movie. I'm kind of reminded of Back to the Future 2. It kind of reminds me of that, where you have this cliffhanger and it just sort of ends with where you're wondering what's going to be that next movie. And, you know, it's like, you know, you feel like a little bit dissatisfied because the situation hasn't been resolved. And, you know, you're kind of like, oh, I feel like I only got half of a movie, even though it was a very long half. So that'd be my biggest complaint. I just feel like, you know, I would love to have seen the full thing rather than it being in two parts. But I did enjoy the movie. That's, you know, my biggest complaint is not really a big complaint at all. I'm just being silly in saying that. But what did you think of the movie? Like, what do you think of my comments about the movie? Do you agree with me about these things? And I'd love to hear people's feedback. Like, you know, was this better than the first one even? And I think in some ways it was. I actually think it was better than the original. Yeah, another thing, oh, before I forget, before I end this video, I should comment one more point. The art direction. Everyone always commented about the art direction. I actually have an issue with the art direction in this video, of the movie, I should say. I felt like the backgrounds were like so underdeveloped, that sometimes I found it a little like almost looking at something that was blurred, and I found that really annoying after a while. That, like, I felt like the backgrounds were just too blurred, and I would like it more to be fleshed out. I know that they did that for artistic reasons, but often I found it more annoying than not. But I really did feel that the overall art direction of the movie was outstanding. You know, it is very stylized. Each universe has their own specific look. I was kind of expecting a little bit more with that, like more like a different artist, like interpretation of what a world would be like. The best of that was actually Lego World. And actually, I heard a really cool story about the Lego world that they showed, the Lego Spider-Man world. Was that the one that created it was a 14-year-old boy. And what happened was he had, I think he made a Lego version, like a Lego version of one of the Spider-Man movies. And the director of the film was so impressed by his skill at recreating the Spider-Man movie using Lego, that he was like invited to basically do the work on this movie for the Lego scene. So I just thought that was cool, that they really, you know, outsourced, you know, these big fans. I think that's really cool. So yeah, that's my review. Again, give me your feedback. I'd love to hear people's comments about it. Did you enjoy the movie? All that stuff. Thanks again. Bye for now.